Alright, in this lesson we're going to take a look at the curve editor inside of 3ds Max. This is where we can really get in and start to edit our animation curves and adjust how the interpolation is taking place between keyframes. Real quickly, let me set up an animated scene. I'm going to create a sphere in the top view, and then let me come in here to the front view and I'll maximize the viewport. I'll hit F3 to shade up my view. Let's move this in just a little bit. I'll activate Auto Key, slide to frame 100, and move the sphere to the other side of the screen. Let's deactivate Auto Key, rewind, and press play.
Wow, top-of-the-line animation.
Absolutely. I'm now a professional.
Oh, yes, you are.
I can now go to work for ILM. Anyway, if we hit play and have a look at how our sphere is moving, we're going to notice something pretty interesting.
Yeah, it kind of speeds up and then slows back down again.
Absolutely. When the animation begins, the ball accelerates, and as it stops, it slows down to nothing. But we didn't really tell it to do that. All we did was we said, I want you to be here at frame 0 and here at frame 100. Everything else that has gone on has taken place because of interpolation. And you can adjust how Max handles interpolation and how your interpolation curves are shaped inside of the curve editor. So let's go ahead and have a look at that now. Under the Graph Editors menu, I can come down to Curve Editor, and we are awarded with the Track View Curve Editor itself. Let's have a quick look at the window itself. Inside the big view, we're going to see all of our animation curves. This is the main view where we see all the curves of animation that appear in our scene. And a quick note about this. For those of you who are glad that you're right now listening to this VTM and not in algebra class somewhere, I have bad news for you. This is exactly like what you dreaded in algebra class.
Yes, it is.
But once you get the hang of it, it's really not that bad. It can be confusing for those who haven't been really, hip into animation for a while, but eventually if you work with this, if you practice, this is not intimidating at all. First of all, across the bottom of this graph, we have the actual frames of our animation. So this is like time. Across the left-hand side, we have our values. So our parameter values are here. We can use this curve to see where our sphere is going to be at any given point in the animation. So, as an example, our sphere is going to begin with a value of negative 159.303, which is designated down here at the very bottom of the screen. And then if we come forward to, say, frame 20... maybe it's frame 28, roughly almost frame 30, and we look straight up, we'll notice that the curve is just passing through the value at negative 100. So here at frame about 28, we'll just assume that's about 28, the sphere is at negative 100. Here at about frame 50, the sphere is at 0, and here roughly around frame 70, it's at positive 100. So you can visually graph how the sphere is moving through the scene by following the curve. And that's the whole idea behind this. It's just showing you how the object is moving through the scene. In this case, it also shows us why the sphere was accelerating and then decelerating. Our curve starts out very flat. Now, for those of you who've ever looked at acceleration curves, you've seen this before. It will slowly slope upward the faster you go. And it's the same thing here. Just a tip, if you've never dealt with curves before, the higher the incline of a curve, the faster the motion. If you have a perfectly flat curve, what does that mean, Joel?
It means that it's not really moving.
Exactly. It means you basically have no animation.
Right.
Now, you can have keyframes, but you won't be having any animation. So right here we have a nearly flat curve. So we have almost no motion going on. And then our curve starts to get steeper and steeper. And the steeper it gets, the faster our object is going to move. Then as it levels back off, our object is slowing back down until it ends up at its value of roughly positive 150 or 164.
So yeah, right at about frame 50, it starts slowing back down again.
Absolutely. So that's the idea behind these curves. Now let's take a look at some of the other parts of this window. Over here we have the hierarchy list, which is going to show us everything inside of our scene, all of the elements. We have the world, which is the top of the hierarchy, which you can select up here. We have sound, any video postings, environments, and so on. But the big important one we're going to be focusing on is down here underneath objects. You can see all of the objects in your scene. In this case, our sphere is the only object, so that's all we're going to see. Then underneath the sphere, that also has children. It has transforms. Under transforms, it has position. And under position, it's got X, Y, and Z position. Interesting thing here, I mentioned a second ago that when you have a flat curve, you have no animation. Now, as you saw a second ago, I only animated a single parameter of our sphere. I only animated it in the X direction. So if I look at X, I've got this nice, flowing curve going on that is designating animation. But if I look at Y and Z, look at these two curves.
They're completely flat.
Perfectly flat. That means there's no animation on those whatsoever. In fact, if I really wanted to, I could come in here and delete these two curves, or at least delete the keyframes on them. So the curves are now gone, and now if I hit play on my animation,
we still get it. We still get the animation we wanted.
Exactly. Nothing has changed. So let's go ahead and rewind that. Let's come back here into the track view. Let's have a quick look at the menu bar across the top of this. I'm not going to go very deep into every single thing, just kind of an overview of what each of the menus are intended for. First, we have modes. It should be noted that the track view comes in two flavors, if you will. First one is the curve editor, which you see here. The other is the dope sheet, which we're going to talk about in a later lesson. This is where you can switch back and forth in between the two. Settings is going to control how various elements inside of the hierarchy list expand. So if you notice, you can expand some of these out. Like there's materials, I can open all my materials up. Objects, if I want to, I can open and close these so I can get to various components and so on.
Right.
So I can control how these things automatically expand. Also a couple of performance controls inside of here as well. Under display, I can control what type of information is displaying in either one of my windows here. I can, just for instance, let me bring up the X position. I can show selected key stats, which means whenever I select a key, we're going to see its statistics, which is the time that it rests at and its current value. So very handy thing to switch on and off. Let me go ahead and deactivate that, and you'll notice those numbers go away. Also, you can see the tangent of this curve. Now, I'm going to talk about tangents later, but if you can't quite make it out on the video, it's this thin blue line with a little blue dot here at the end of it, and I'll talk about those here in a minute. But we can activate all tangents, which means we see tangents for every key, whether it's selected or not. So I'll go ahead and shut that off. We can activate custom icons for various objects here inside the hierarchy list. We can show an icon for all keyable objects. We can hide all curves that are non-selected. This is on by default, by the way. Or we can show curves that aren't selected. That won't help us too much right now because we have no other curves.
Right.
We can also freeze non-selected curves, so if we don't accidentally move them around or change them. We also have a list of filters, which you can access, if you'll notice, by hitting the Q key. And this allows us greater control over what we see and what we don't inside of this window. So we can hide various objects, show only specific objects, and so on. But I'm not going to dwell too much on this window. Under controllers, we can assign and control various animation controllers, which it's not something we're going to cover heavily in this video. I just want to get people animating. I don't want them to focus too hard on the many intricacies behind animation in 3ds Max. For tracks, we can add note tracks and visibility tracks for hiding objects during our animation. The keys menu actually has many of the tools that appear in the toolbar, so I'm not going to dwell on these too much. But we can add keys, we can reduce our keys, which I will demonstrate. It's a very cool tool. We can move, slide, scale. We can also activate soft selection, which I'll go ahead and set up. Let me go ahead and say use soft selection. You'll notice our curve has changed color. It's no longer completely red. Yeah, it kind of fades out to white, and I'll talk about that here in a bit. But also underneath this, you can bring up the soft select settings, which if you watch down here in the bottom of this window, this blank area, if I activate this, this now fills in with my settings for soft selection. So we can align a selection of keys to our cursor. So if I have maybe 10 keys selected on my window, and I can just align them directly to the location of my time cursor, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute. And we can snap on frames, which is very important if you don't want any of your keys to go to, say, frame 100.12 or something like that. If you need to keep everything...
It can get confusing.
Exactly. If you need to keep everything concisely on keyframes, you want to leave this activated, and it is on by default. Under curves, we can apply ease and multiplier curves, which I'm not going to talk about too much in this lesson, actually at all. We're not going to cover those really in this lesson. This is, like I said, just sort of an intro. And finally, we have some utilities, which I will just bring up the menu if we need to randomize keys, create out-of-range keys, which I might demonstrate at the end of this video, although not using this specific utility. The soft selection settings manager, most of these are third-party scripts that have been incorporated into Max, a lot like the utilities panel inside the command panel. So from here, we jump down to the toolbar. This is where all of the magic happens, so to speak. This is where almost every single important thing you need to use is going to be located. First of all, we have the filters button, which just like up under display, It's going to access the filters, which you saw just a moment ago, so there's that. Then we have the Move Keys tool, which is typically activated as soon as you bring this window in. What this is going to do is allow you to take selected keys and move them around, and you can see how my actual curve is adjusting as I do this. Right now I have both of these keys selected. By the way, I just freaked a couple of people out. They're like, how is he moving about that window? Actually, this moves about exactly like your viewport. If you hold down the middle mouse button, you can pan around, and I'm scrolling the mouse to zoom in and out. Now, we do have some controls down here that I'll talk about here in just a moment. But jumping back up here, if I just select this single keyframe, and for now, let me switch off soft selection just so my curve is a little bit easier to see. So it's now a nice red curve again. If I move this keyframe around, you'll see that I can adjust it in time and in value. Now, which direction is which? Just to recap, for those of you who have already forgotten what I said just a few minutes ago, moving up and down will adjust the key's value. Moving left and right will adjust the key in time. So with this specific move tool selected, I can move in both simultaneously if I need to. So I can make this keyframe happen earlier and be of a lower value. Let's go ahead and just take a second and test it out. If I hit rewind, and let's go ahead and update my viewport with the tilde key. Look at that.
Very nice. It finishes much faster.
Also, if you look down here inside of our track bar, you can see the keyframe itself has moved. The key that was once at frame 100 has slid all the way back to frame, what frame is this? This is frame 24.
Right, so you changed it to frame 24, and you also changed the value so that it doesn't move all the way across the screen.
Absolutely. So we've essentially scaled down the entire animation. It moves faster in time and less in value. So just sort of, I shouldn't use the term scale, because we actually have a tool for scaling keys down, but you see what I'm talking about. Anyway, let's go ahead and open this back up. Let me shrink this down just a little bit. We've already talked about the hierarchy list, so we don't really need to see all of that. Maybe not that much. Let's bring it up just a little bit. And there we go. And see, this way we can still see our animation as we make adjustments. In fact, let me bring this down. Oh, I'm getting picky now.
Uh-oh. Zach is being picky.
I know. Okay, so that'll work. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom up the extents on this, and I'll talk about these here in just a moment. Let me undo this movement of our curve. So here's our curve back the way it was just a second ago. So from here, you'll notice this is a fly-out button. It's got the little black triangle down in the corner. If I hold down the mouse on this, I have two separate tools that I can use. One for moving only left and right, and one for moving up and down. Essentially, just for moving in time or in value, as you might need to. So let's say I just needed to change the value of my curve, but not necessarily its timing. I can select the vertical tool and just pull this down to about 0. Now let's rewind and hit play. Let's actually zoom out a little bit so we can see. Hang on, let me just start that over again. We'll hit play now, and our sphere stops right as it hits 0 now. It doesn't go clear to the other side of the screen as it did a second ago. Let me undo that. We'll set it back up where it was, and you can see the difference.
All right, cool.
So you can see how the object is moving across the screen. Sorry about that whole moving the screen thing a second ago. All right, so we can also, as I mentioned, we can adjust these in time. So with this selected, just the move keys horizontally, I can slide this back. And Joel, what do you think is going to happen, man?
I think it's going to go very fast.
Maybe not very fast. Let's make it very fast. So there's 20 frames. That should be very fast. Boom.
Ah, that's cool.
And it just flies right over. In 20 frames, it's already done with its animation. So that's how moving keys horizontally is going to affect you. Next to this, we have slide keys. Now, slide keys, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate very well unless I get some more keyframes into my scene. So let me do that real quick. Don't worry too much about what I'm doing, because I'll demonstrate it here in just a moment. But I'm getting some more keyframes in here. And now if I activate my slide keys button, I can select a keyframe and move it, and look what happens to the keys that come after it.
Oh, very cool.
They get pushed further down the line. Now let me zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole curve moving. Now, a couple of you out there are going like, well, that's not so special. Let me show you what happens if I just try to do this with the regular move tool. If I grab this one key and start to slide it over,
it doesn't, none of the other keys are affected.
Nope, they don't care where that key goes. The rest of the curve will just interpolate to whatever its new position becomes. So right now, the current value of this key is negative 42.834. So right now, we would have a pretty nice little slope. Our object would just kind of slide to the other side of the screen, similar to what it did a second ago. But if we move this up, say, between these two keys, what's it just without playing? What does it look like our object is going to do?
Well, it's going to continue. It's going to end up at that last location, but it's going to kind of have a little jolt back.
Exactly. It's going to be moving forward, because moving upward means it's essentially increasing. And then it's going to get to this spot, and it's going to go backwards, and then it's going to go forward really, really quick. So let's go ahead and see if our theory's right. We play slowly, and then fast back, fast forward.
Right. Very cool.
So you can see how just moving this key around has changed things around. Now, let's jump back and look at slide keys again. Now, if I move this key, I'm just sliding the rest of the keys further away. Now, we're kind of moving beyond the range of our animation here, so let me go ahead and undo that a couple of times. And what I'll do is just slide this out, maybe to about here. And now if we play, what's going to happen is you'll notice this area has been flattened out or stretched out. The closer it gets to being perfectly flat, the less animation we get, or the slower our animation will go. So let's go ahead and hit play. Our object slows down to a crawl and then continues right on. And our animation time length, which is only 100 frames, is actually too short to show the rest of the animation. But
basically bullet time.
It's fine. Yeah, it still shows our example very well. Actually, yeah, you could use this for a bullet time-like effect very easily. Very good example. All right, so there's slide keys. Next we have scale keys. Scale keys is a very neat tool. Let me go ahead and zoom up just a little bit on our window here so we can see our entire curve. Now, I'm going to grab our key here, and let me just scale it over. We'll just go ahead and select scale keys. Now, actually, this is going to work better if I select multiple keys. And now, as I move these, watch what happens.
It scales all the keys down.
Exactly. But take a look at where it's scaling them to.
Right.
It's scaling them to the location of the...
so it's kind of like the pivot point.
Exactly. It's scaling to the location of the time cursor, and it's moving exactly like the pivot point. So if I put the time cursor directly in the middle, and I scale down, watch what happens.
Very cool.
We scale down to that point. And really, scaling keys down in this manner is basically doing what, Joel?
It's basically speeding it up.
Exactly. It's speeding up our animation. So with this, if I rewind, why don't you take a look at this curve and describe to me as best you can how this is going to go.
Well, first it's going to stay in its current position.
Okay, because we have a perfectly flat curve.
Right. So when it gets to about frame 34, it'll speed up and shoot all the way over to the other side of the screen to about frame 70-ish.
Okay. And then it's just going to sit still.
Sit still, right.
All right, let's go ahead and try it out. Sit still, fires across the screen, and then stops. So in a sense, we just took our entire timeline and scaled it down to speed things up a little bit. Now, on the other hand of that, we have scale values. And if we select this, we get a new indicator here on our actual, in our window. This is going to kind of be the scale pivot for scaling only values. Now, if we're scaling only values, what direction are we scaling our curve?
Up and down.
Exactly. So let me set this back to the center of our window here. As I move these down, look what happens.
Very cool. So you can actually invert your animation.
Oh, absolutely. We could go to negative scale if we wanted to, and then if we rewind and hit play, our object now moves backwards.
Very cool.
Also, we can move this pivot to any point we need it to go. So we can set it all the way down here to the bottom of the curve and scale all of this down. And now what we're going to end up with is less animation. So we're actually not moving as far. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
All right, very good. So next we have add keys, which you just saw me use a second ago, although I really wasn't talking too much about it. Before I demonstrate it, let me delete some of these keys that I have already on this curve. So now we get back to this kind of nice S-curve like we had just a second ago. Now we'll go ahead and use the thing like this to kind of blow it up just a little more. And if I click on the Add Keys button, you'll notice that I can just click anywhere on my curve, and it places down a keyframe. So let's say I need to change the shape of this curve. With the curve as it is right now, I can change the shape, and we'll discuss how later, but if I need to make a drastic change, I won't be able to. I need to add a new keyframe, which essentially is going to work like a new edit point for this curve. And then I can come back over here to my Move Key tool and move this around and make huge changes to how this curve looks, and thereby make drastic changes to how my animation will behave. So maybe, just for example's sake, what do you think something like this would do?
It's going to go up all the way past the screen to the right and then go back to the left to it's the location where we had before.
So it goes out of the screen and then sneaks back in to say hey. Very good, very good. All right, so let's go ahead and delete that back out. Actually deleted too far. Let me just select this single curve, and we'll delete that and get our curve right back to where it was. Next to this, we have the Draw Curves tool.
Now, this is cool.
This is awesome. In fact, this is almost, you could argue, this is almost like motion capture.
Almost, yeah.
Because what you can do with this is just click on this guy and watch this. I can draw my very own animation curve.
Very cool.
Now it's kind of messy. Let me do a better one than that. So I know. Here's Joel's like, oh gosh, give me a break. So
wow, isn't that awesome?
Here's our new hand-drawn curve, which is kind of messy. But there's something to be aware of when you hand-draw your curves. You've got a lot of keyframes.
Yes, you do.
In order to interpolate all of the motion that you brought in, Max laid down a tremendous amount of keys just to get everything going. Let's just hit play and see what this looks like.
Wow, that's kind of scary.
That is, but I mean, it's actually there. I mean, I hand drew the animation for this specific track.
Yes, that is
awesome.
Very cool.
Now, with all of these keys, I mean, if I had a really heavy scene, this would just be helping me out to slow down the computer.
That's for sure.
And that's bad. I don't want that. So what I can do is use the key reducer, which is this tool right next to the draw keys. And usually, I'll just kind of mention this. The reduce keys tool is going to be used almost exclusively with the draw curves tool. But if I go ahead and bring this up, I get a threshold, and within this threshold, keys will be eliminated. This is 0.5 by default. You can see I've already been playing with this just a little bit. But if I go ahead and hit OK, a few of the keys were dropped, but not many. So let's go ahead and crank our threshold way up. And you can see
look at that.
It starts to simplify the amount of keys on the curve.
It maintains the general shape of it.
Exactly. Now, you can experiment with this and start pulling more until you get the amount of detail you want. Be careful, though, because if it deletes too many keys, you won't have the shape that you originally started out with. So now if I hit play, we have the same kind of action going on, but the curve is much simpler and therefore much easier for Max to interpolate and animate. All right, next we have our tangent types. And I don't mean to jump around too much, but before I talk about those, let me go ahead and talk about these navigation controls down here in the bottom of the window, and then we'll come up and look at these. First, let me undo back to our original curve. Now, just real quick, we've got our pen tool, which is just like holding down the middle mouse. If I click on it, I can pan around the scene and look at all my different curves from different angles. Well, not really,
different angles, but
yeah, just from different positions. There we go. That's what I was looking for. We have zoom extents horizontal and zoom vertical extents. Let me go ahead and just get this tool get this curve way out of line here. Now look at this. If I zoom horizontal extents, our curve that we have selected is now fit into the screen horizontally. So where the curve begins and where the curve ends are in the screen as far as time is concerned, but we still can't see the whole curve. So now if I zoom extents vertically, our values are scaled down as well. Now, here's the thing. This is essentially like zooming.
Right.
No, it is zooming in a sense. So let me go ahead and demonstrate my zoom tool real quick. If I click on this, I can zoom uniformly into and out of the screen. And you'll notice there's a little black triangle here, so this is another flyout. So I can hold this down and I can zoom only horizontally, or I can zoom only vertically. Now, that sounds confusing, and at first, if you've never animated before, you might be curious why you would ever use that. But you've got to remember that time and value are two different series here on the graph, and they're going to be working independently of each other. So you might have a curve that only takes place between frame 0 and 100 in this case, but it might go between -1,000 and 10,000.
Right.
And so you'd have to do a lot of vertical zooming to fit all of that in your screen, and not necessarily horizontal zooming. So you can do either one here. And just a quick note, you can, just like in the viewport, hold down Control and Alt. Let me get back out of here and just go back to a normal tool. If you hold down Control, Alt, and middle mouse, you can still smooth zoom just like you did inside the viewport. You can roll your mouse and get the standard mouse wheel zoom. And get this, if you hold down Control, Alt, and Shift, you can zoom either vertically or horizontally just by moving the mouse.
Very cool.
So that's holding Control, Alt, Shift, and the middle mouse button. If that doesn't give you a hand cramp, 1, nothing will, but 2, you'll be able to do some really nice, convenient zooming inside of this window. Finally, the last thing we have is the Zoom Region tool, which is just going to allow us to draw out a box, and we'll zoom right into where that box is. So if you know you got an area of keys you need to tweak, you can just draw a box around those keys, and you'll zoom right into them.
Easy enough.
So real quick, let me just hit our 2 Zoom Extends tools, and we're all set with that. Let's have a quick look. Actually, there's no way to have a quick look at this. We're going to have a look at tangencies. Now, what are tangencies? Well, actually, tangencies only have to do with curves. I mean, if you break it down and go back to your geometry class and ask your geometry teacher what tangencies were all about, they only have to do with how curves move. But that's great, because curves are how our interpolation is defined. So, in a sense, what we're doing is controlling our interpolation. We're changing the shape of our curve without adding any new keyframes. And there are several types of curve interpolation, types of tangencies, if you will, that we can use inside of 3ds Max. The first one is automatic, and this is typically the default tangent type. And you'll know that you have auto if you select a tangent. Let me get back here to our Move tool. Oh, that's the material editor, my bad. Let's go ahead and get back to our Move tool, and I'll click this key, and you'll notice I do have my blue tangent handle. This means that we have an automatic tangent. The tangent weight has automatically been placed by 3ds Max. Now, a quick note, and this is where things start to get a little hectic, so if you've never animated before, listen close. Every single keyframe has 2 tangencies. It's got an in tangent and an out tangent. And that can be a little confusing at first. To kind of help the situation out, let me add another keyframe here into the middle of our curve, about like so, and we can really start to see how this goes. Now first, let me describe. An in tangent is going to be the tangent coming into a keyframe from the left. So that's going to be defining the curve that comes into a key from the left. The out tangent is going to be the tangent that goes out of the key into the curve toward the right. The great thing about this is you can have 2 different tangencies on a single keyframe. You can have an in tangent of one type and an out tangent of another. So for example, let's just say, I know I haven't talked about all of these tangent types specifically, but just bear with me for a moment. Let me grab this keyframe down here at the bottom, and I'm going to set its out tangent type, well, I'll just set its entire tangent type to linear. Now this middle key, I'm going to take its in tangent type, which you'll notice here has got the little tiny black arrow pointing inward toward it. We'll set that to linear as well, but we're going to set its out tangent type to, we'll say, custom. So let's set out tangents to custom. You'll notice it's got a little white box with an arrow coming out of it. So now I've got a tangent handle only coming out of this key and not going into it. What this means is that now, if I want to, I can edit the tangency on this one side, and actually doing that automatically set it for the other side. I'll talk about that here in just a moment. But I can have a separate tangency on one side of the key than I do on the other. So let's have a quick look at how this would play through. We have constant motion, and then a spring back and smooth curving acceleration.
Very nice.
So that's just a quick demonstration of how you can have 2 different tangencies on a single keyframe. For now, though, let me go ahead and delete this particular key out. So we've seen auto tangents. Those are automatically set up by 3ds Max. Now, each of these is a flyout, and just a quick thing real quick. You have a quick thing real quick. That was clever, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Our 3 flyout options are setting in and out tangents at the top, only setting the in tangent, or only setting the out tangent. So I'm not going to be touching on all those. You've seen it. It's the same for each one. Now I'm just going to talk about the tangent types in general. So we have the automatic keys, which I've already mentioned. You can see a blue tangent weight, but these, like I said, are controlled through Max. From here we have this next one, which is custom tangents. Now this is going to be a tangent that you can actually set. You can grab the tangent handle and move it around, and you can see how that's adjusting the curve in a Bezier style. For those of you who've worked with maybe Photoshop and played with the pen tool, you're already familiar with how this is working. The longer out you pull this black handle, the more weight this tangent handle has. So the shorter it is, the less weight it has, and then you can adjust the weight's angle as well. So you can see how that's adjusting the curve. Now just a quick thing, if I set this back to automatic, and then I grab this handle and move it, the handle is going to immediately turn black. That means that it has automatically converted over to custom. If you have an automatic tangent, it has been set by Max and it is blue. As soon as you change it, you now have a custom tangent type, so just be aware of that. So from here, actually, let's go ahead and have a quick look at this. What do you think this curve is going to look like? Or what's our animation going to look like based off this curve, I should say?
Well, it's going to be really fast at first and then be really slow at the end.
All right, very good. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. We hit play, we go really fast, and slow down to almost nothing.
Hey, pretty cool.
And we didn't place any new keyframes or anything. All we did was adjust this single tangent handle. So very, very cool. Now, if we set, just a quick thing, if we set both of these to custom, we can start adding a whole lot of weight to both of these. And we can get some pretty crazy looking curves just by playing with tangent weights. So I highly recommend that you play with these and really see what your curves can do. Now from here, we have set tangents to fast. So basically what fast is going to do is give you high acceleration leaving the key, or fast acceleration coming into it, depending on the kind of tangent type you set.
Right.
Essentially, it's just fast. It's what it all boils down to. If I set this bottom key to fast, and just for counter's sake, let me go ahead and set this the end key to slow. We get this curvature where our object is going to be moving at a fast rate, which is going to slow down gradually over time. So let's go ahead and rewind, and we'll hit play. So you can see our object slowing down as it gets toward the end. So you can think of fast as generally a way to accelerate into or out of a keyframe. Next to that, we have slow, which is the converse. It's going to decelerate into or out of a keyframe. So maybe I'll set this original key to slow, and let's set this final key to fast. And now we have the opposite effect. We have a curve which basically defines that our object will barely move at first, and it'll accelerate, 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 until it gets to the end where it's going to be moving its fastest. So there it goes, going faster and faster, and boom. So very cool. Next, we have step tangents. Now, these are very cool. These are going to be great for things like blinking lights on and off, or any kind of... I wouldn't use them
Sudden
for
motion.
Yeah, I wouldn't use them for any kind of motion on an object or a character, and here's why. Let me go ahead and add let me add at least one more keyframe in here so we can really see this work. I'm going to take this original keyframe, and we'll set it to step. Now look at our curve. It's perfectly flat right up until the time of the next keyframe, and then it jumps straight up. Now, what do you think that means, Joel?
Well, that means that there's going to be no animation. It's going to be at its original location for the first, let's say, 55 frames, and then suddenly it's going to start moving again and jump to a value first.
That's the cool thing. It is going to start moving, but it's going to be so fast we really won't see it.
Right.
In essence, what's going to happen is our object is going to sit still for the first 55 frames and then just leap to its next position. Let me go ahead and demonstrate. If I hit play, it sits still, and then pow. It just jumps to its next location automatically. Very handy, like I said, if you need a light to blink on and off without fading at all. You need to just be on, then be off. Very handy thing to have. For now, though, let me go ahead and delete this out, and you'll notice now our entire key range is set to stepped, so let me switch that back off. We'll put it back on auto for now. I'll demonstrate the others in a minute. Next, we have linear. Now, let me set both of my tangents to linear. Linear will really only be effective if you use it in between two keyframes. So if, like, just for example, let me delete this extra keyframe here. I seem to have added one more than I needed. If I have two keys, the out tangent of the left key needs to be linear, and the in tangent of the right key needs to be linear. So let me just go ahead and set both of these. Now look at my line.
So it's a straight line.
Perfectly straight. Now what does this mean about our animation?
That the velocity is going to always be the same.
Exactly. It's going to have a constant rate. So if I hit play, it's always going to move at the same speed with no acceleration, no deceleration whatsoever.
Very cool.
Alright, so almost done. Let's take a look at one more. And really to show this one off, I'm going to add a few keys. So let's bring in, we'll just say 3 more keys. And let me go to key mode. I'm going to move these to some pretty crazy positions. So we'll really stretch this out. What I'm going to demonstrate now is the smooth tangency type. Now this is actually just like a smooth, for those of you who've played with shapes and curves inside of Max, or lines if you will, this is just like setting your tangents to smooth for those. But if I set all of these to smooth, boom. What's going to happen is Max is going to try to keep this curve nice and smooth by maintaining tangency from one segment to another. So right here, I've got this nice curve that goes straight up, and then it just goes straight over. Rather than have the curve change direction dramatically, Smooth tangents are going to make it arc up very smoothly. Hate to keep using the word, but
Right.
and then it's going to arc back down. This can be good and this can be bad. This can lead to some very nice natural flowing motion.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it can lead to overshooting.
Overshooting, which is something I'm just going to kind of bring up off to the side. We're not quite into character animation yet, but for those of you who are daring and want to take what we've got and push it to the realm of character animation, if you will, overshoot is, I say, it's not always a problem, but it can be. Like, let's just say, for example, that we only wanted our sphere to move to a value of about 170. We don't want it to go any higher than that. So you'll notice here we have a value of 163, 105, and then over here we have a value of 161. So, I mean, it's just a very light change. But look what the curve is doing because it's on smooth. Now, if the object were to remain constant in between these two, we'd have this nice part where the sphere would just kind of come out here to the end of the animation, and then it should stop. It should sit relatively still.
Right.
But watch what happens instead. In fact, let me zoom out. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Let me zoom out just a little bit so that we can see. Watch this. Whoa! Goes way beyond where we want it to. In fact, if I go ahead and let's set our screen back up so that we're zoomed right in only to where our animation is going to be taking place. So right about here will do. What we want to happen in this case, we want our object to get to the edge of the screen and stay, but because of smooth tangency, it's going to overshoot that and then come all the way back. That is what overshoot is. It's a continuing on beyond what your keyframe value is. And we can fix this in several ways. One, we can take both of these keys and set them back to automatic, and you'll notice they flatten back out. And now if we hit play, we get right to that point and we stop. So our overshoot has been eliminated. So just something to be aware of if you're trying to get exact motion, like maybe, for example, not even character animation. Maybe we've got like a ball which is rolling through a maze. If overshoot takes place, you could have that ball accidentally go through a wall even though you didn't keyframe it at that location. So just definitely something for you to be aware of. Next to here we have lock selection. This is going to work just like lock selection inside the viewport, which is by default is the space bar. So it's also the space bar inside of this window. If we have our selection locked, no matter where we click, we are just moving that selection, provided, like in this case, we have the move tool selected.
Right.
It's tool dependent, just like inside the viewport. We have snap-on frames, which is activated by default, and we're not going to deactivate it. We have parameter curve and out-of-range types, which, like I said, I think I'll go ahead and demonstrate this at the very end of our lesson, but we're not going to talk about it too much right now. Show keyable icons, which was available in the display menu. So if I click that, you can see icons by all parameters that are keyable. We have show all tangents, which if I activate this, the tangents for all of our curves become visible. We have just show tangents at all, so whether or not tangents are visible, and then lock tangents. And lock tangents is kind of interesting. In fact, there is something about tangency I need to bring up, and this is just as good of an opportunity as any. Let me take all of my curves here, and I'm going to set all these back to custom so I can really start messing with the tangency handles, which you can see here, these little black lines. You'll notice as I move this one tangent handle around, what happens to the opposite tangent handle?
It moves along.
Absolutely. That might not be what you want.
Right.
Let's say, for example, I wanted this curve. Let me move this key just a little bit. Let's just select it by itself, and I'll move it out. Maybe what I want is for the ball to really smoothly accelerate and then slow down to this point, and then I want it to drastically change direction, very sharp. What I can do is hold down the Shift key when I move a tangent handle, and that breaks the tangent.
So now it's independent of the other tangent.
Exactly, completely independent. But as soon as I let go of Shift, I can... Actually, I'm sorry, it's going to stay that way forever. My bad. Just almost get confused. It's getting late.
Yes, it is.
And I'm hungry. So anyway, so now we've broken this tangent, and it moves completely independent of the last tangency handle. So now let's go ahead and hit play, and it has a drastic change in direction. So a very cool way to control how your animation is flowing.
Definitely.
Now, another quick thing I'd like to bring up is lock tangents. Now, that doesn't do what you might think at first. The first time you hear that, you're going to think, oh, well, if I activate this, I can't move my tangents. That's not at all what it is. Essentially, what this will do is this will take all of your selected keys and move the tangency handles at the same times. So if I hold down the Shift key, it's going to do some kind of crazy stuff here. I'll tell you what. let me simplify my curve real quick. And let's go ahead and set this back to auto so I have a nice, clean looking curve again. And what I'll do is I'll move both of these keys with lock tangents at the same time. So, I can't do that. Let me go ahead. Hang on. Pardon me.
It's all good.
There we go. So here's what I'm looking for. I need 2 keys, like so. And now I'm going to activate lock tangents, and I'm going to move both of these tangents at the same time. And look at this.
Ah, very cool.
If I move one, the other one comes right along with it. That's what lock tangents does. If I switch that off, I only move one at a time. So if you need to move several tangent handles at one time for whatever the reason, that's how you're going to be doing it. Really, though, that's about all I really wanted to bring up. Let me go ahead and just show the out-of-range curves relatively quickly. For now, I'm going to grab all my keys, so all my animation will delete it off this guy. And here's what I'm going to do. Check this out. I'm going to switch on auto key. And let's say I need to move my window here so I can see my timeline just a little bit. Let's come, say, to frame 30. And I'll move the object forward in X, so we automatically get a little bit of animation. Now I'm going to go back with the time slider to about frame 15 and move the object straight up, which is going to give me sort of a hop. So the object is now bouncing. Now, just like I said, this is just a quick demo, not like the definitive word in out-of-range curves. But real quick, if I do come under controller and come down to out-of-range types, I have this one down here at the bottom called relative repeat. And if I activate this out beyond infinity, like so, let's go ahead and leave the inner constant. We'll set the next one out to relative repeat and click OK. What's going to happen is my curves are going to continue on for infinity. So this one curve that I actually animated is going to just keep right on going. So let me go ahead and come back to a perspective view so we can see this. What I did was I took this single bit of animation, this little 30-frame animation, and told Max to continue doing that animation, relatively speaking. So let's just hit play and see what this does.
Oh, very cool.
Our object just continues to bounce. And if we were to take our animation and maybe increase its time, like maybe set it to 500 frames instead of just 1, and click OK, we can just sit here and watch our ball bounce off into the distance.
Very cool.
So just a quick recap. I did that by going under controller, going to out of range types, and I just set this to relative repeat, which will repeat your animation relatively over and over and over. So, like I said, just a quick thing kind of as a treat for those of you who are interested.
That's cool.
It is very handy. Like, let's say you have a pendulum and a clock. You can animate it just doing one single swing back and forth, and then set its curves to relative repeat, and it'll just go for the length of your animation, no matter how long your animation is.
Very cool.
Alright, so with that, I want to show one more thing. Let's actually show a practical use of all of this stuff that we've just demonstrated. Alright, so what I've just done is I have fetched the scene that we worked on earlier in the Intro to Animation lesson. You remember our trajectories where we've got our little ball just kind of bouncing up and down? So what I'm going to do now is use the curve editor to actually edit this curve and make it look more like this ball is actually bouncing. So let's go ahead and go back under Graph Editors, and let's bring up the curve editor. And I'll select my ball. And first of all, let's take a look at the X position, which is this nice curvy line here. What I want is for the ball to be moving at a constant rate. I don't want this S-curve kind of animation. I don't need the acceleration and deceleration. So I'm going to take all of the curves on the inside, select them, and delete them. And then simply take both of my curves, we'll select them both, holding down the Control key, and just set their tangent types to linear. So now after I've done that, I can come in here, and you'll notice that if I update my viewport, my trajectory has changed as well. So if I hit play, we have a constant forward motion. So we're getting closer to what I'm looking for, but now we need to worry about the up and down motion. Right now, our ball is kind of waving up and down. It doesn't really look like it's bouncing because it slows down right before it hits the ground, and when something's bouncing, it doesn't really do that.
No, not at all.
So what I'm going to do is grab all of my keys down here at the very bottom, and for starters, I'm just going to set them all to fast. And that already has a drastic change over the shape of our curve.
Actually, that would probably look pretty good already.
Oh, absolutely. So now,
yeah, that's actually looking really nice.
already looking much better than it did a second ago. So let's say maybe we just want to tweak it a little bit more. Maybe we're not happy unless we have total control, and really that's kind of the way I am.
Yes.
So it's
we all are.
You didn't have to agree that quick. All right, so what we can do, let me go ahead and take these tangencies, and I'm going to set them instead of fast to custom. And I'm just going to bring the weights up, holding down Shift, just a little bit, so we have more of an acceleration as we leave the ground and as we enter. So it's going to be a subtle change, maybe not apparent after we encode the video, but let's go ahead and have a quick look anyway. Kind of cartoony looking, but we can see how this is changing the shape of our animation, how our animation itself is changing. Now we can also grab these tangents here at the top and maybe give them just a little more weight on each side of the tangent so that our ball kind of stays in the air just a fraction of a second longer. Let's rewind and hit play. And now it just kind of seems to float when it gets really high, like it's a really kind of a light ball and it's just kind of bouncing up and down. Just a cool way to show you a demonstration for how all of this curve editing can come in very handy.
And how important tangents are, really.
Absolutely. So let me go ahead and I'm going to come down here and hide my trajectories again because we don't need to see them in this file. And really, that's about all I want to cover inside of this video. So we've seen a lot of stuff over the curve editor. So thanks a lot, everyone.